recently the class action lawsuit against the DNC was heard in court. Now, you have lawyers on behalf of some Bernie Sanders supporters that are basically saying, hey, we donated to Bernie Sanders. We expected a fair primary. They say that that the DNC screwed them out of the nomination, or screwed Bernie Sanders out of the nomination and them out of their money by not being by not being impartial and essentially rigging the primary against Bernie Sanders. Now, originally Jordan Sheridan broke this story. He's TYT Politics reporter, and it's since been picked up elsewhere. Now, the argument from the DNC's lawyers actually comes from a transcript of the court proceedings from April 28th. Now, what we find in these transcripts is essentially the DNC trying to justify the violation of its own rules. Now, this is interesting. The DNC Charter, Article 5, Section 4, reads, in the conduct and management of the affairs and procedures of the Democratic National Committee, particularly as they apply to the preparation and conduct of the presidential nomination process, the chairperson, which at the time was Debbie Wasserman Schultz, shall exercise impartiality and even-handedness as between the presidential candidates and campaigns. The chairperson shall be responsible for ensuring that the national officers and staff of the Democratic National Committee maintain impartiality and even-handedness during the Democratic Party presidential nomination process. Now, Ron, we know, because we've read about this, WikiLeaks, etc., that was definitely not the case. There was not even-handedness during the DNC primary from any of the officials. I mean, you had Donna Brazile getting caught passing questions to Hillary Clinton from CNN while she was a contributor. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, of course, now disgraced for, siding for, basically shilling for Hillary Clinton, right? And you even had Tom Perez, who also in WikiLeaks was saying, like, hey, I know, let's use Bernie Sanders, the fact that he's a Jewish person, against him.
Mm-hmm.
All those people, now in very high positions in the DNC, by the way, going for Hillary Clinton, not at all being even-handed. So they were all in the tank for Clinton. And now, of course, the DNC's attorney tried to justify this by claiming that their rules were discretionary. Oh, our rules? We don't have to follow those rules. We wrote them. We said we were going to abide by them, but we were just kidding. We're not going to follow our own rules. Are you kidding me? Fair primary? What do you mean? This is essentially them admitting that we had no intention to allow a fair contest between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, and therefore you should have known that. You should have known that we were in the tank, so therefore we don't have to give you your money back. That's essentially what this boils down to.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, which is remarkable, where they're like, oh, you
really
expected us to play fair? Well, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, we're going to keep your money.
Yeah, we're going to keep your money. And then we're going to talk about how Trump didn't play fair, even though we don't have any concrete evidence, and we're inciting a bunch of xenophobia that could lead to a war.
Well, right now, to be fair, we're too busy on focused on North Korea now, as well as Russia. So,
well, yeah. I mean, it depends on what camp you're sitting in.
Sure.
I mean, it's either, it's hyperbole, pretty much nonsense on either side. But either way, it's equally scary. And the dude that has access to the codes is a sociopath that, could accidentally drop a bomb instead of just getting himself a Coca-Cola.
Oops. Now, the attorneys representing the DNC have previously argued that Sanders supporters, and I alluded to this earlier, they knew that the primaries were rigged ahead of time, therefore annulling any potential accountability the DNC may have. In the latest hearing, they doubled down on that argument, saying that the court would have to find that people who fervently supported Bernie Sanders and who purportedly didn't know that this favoritism was going on would not have given to Senator Sanders, if they had known that there was this purported favoritism. So saying that if you gave money, you had to have known that they had favored Hillary Clinton in the first place, and that they gave anyway knowing that. Well, that's an interesting argument. It is kind of right out in the open, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the attorney representing Bernie Sanders said, or I'm sorry, not Bernie Sanders, but the Sanders supporters that are suing said, quote, people paid money in reliance on the understanding that the primary elections for the Democratic nominee nomination process in 2016 were fair and impartial. And that's not just just a bedrock assumption that we would assume just by virtue of the fact that we live in a democracy. And we assume that our elections are run in a fair and impartial manner. But that's what the Democratic Party, again, that's what their own charter says. It says, and they can't deny that, not only is it in the charter, but it was stated over and over again in the media by the Democratic National Committee's employees, including Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, that they were, in fact, acting in compliance with the charter, and that they said it again and again, and we've cited several instances of that in the case. So basically what they're saying is that the DNC lawyers are saying we didn't actually have to follow that rule, and however, you had everybody from the DNC during the nominating process saying, we're following that rule. We're being completely fair and impartial, and we're not in the tank for Hillary Clinton. We're giving them both equal access, opportunity, etc. We're both treating them incredibly fairly, so you just need to get off our balls.
Mm-hmm.
But see, that's not what happened. Now, furthermore, one more here. Attorneys representing the DNC claim that the DNC would also be well within their rights to, quote, go into back rooms like they used to and smoke cigars and pick the candidate that way. Basically going back to the smoke-filled room. Well, if we wanted to, and I guess they could since they're a private entity, do that. But that seems pretty shitty, especially for people who are new to the process, who gave in good faith expecting the DNC to be impartial and fair and to give Bernie Sanders a fair hearing. Well, they didn't do that. And so they really did screw people over. And I'm not saying like that Bernie Sanders would have won if they were fair and impartial, even though I personally believe that it would have happened. But all we can do is just say that we think that that's what might have happened. We'll never know because it never was fair to begin with. But what the DNC had done basically is that they said it was her turn. It was Hillary Clinton's turn. We're going to do everything we can to put the primary in favor of one candidate over the other to make sure they win, even elevating Donald Trump as a Pied Piper candidate, along with what they tried to do with Ted Cruz and Ben Carson, in order to make it easier for Hillary Clinton to win the general election after she, of course, got handed the primary. So this is a very interesting case. I mean, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm definitely on board with you that the DNC acted incredibly corruptly throughout the primary. And there's really been no accountability taken for that whatsoever. There's been no talk of ending superdelegates. There's been no talk of basically what's happened there. There's been no apology to Bernie Sanders. There's been no reflection on, did we handle this wrong? There's been no, I mean, I understand how, there's only so much productivity in saying, oh, Bernie would have won or this or that. But, reflecting on what really happened is essential in forming a strong platform to move forward. That hasn't been done. Even though Bernie is in the party, he's the most popular politician in the country. And his platform still hasn't been adopted. Democrats want to have their cake and eat it too when it comes to Bernie Sanders. They want to milk his popularity. They want his email list. They want him to step in line. But they don't want to adopt anything that made him popular, which is what the people want. I mean, basically, the Democratic establishment says, you report to us instead of we report to the people. I think there should be. I think that if that's not altered, there should be consequences because of it.
Let me address that point for a minute there. with Bernie Sanders being incredibly popular and the DNC not wanting to change. So what's the DNC's reaction? Well, I mean, through the media, they have really been ramping up attacks on Bernie Sanders. They've been ramping up attacks in corporate media. There's been Slate that has been writing articles, negative articles against him, and people who support him. And there's also been Washington Post articles going after his supposedly strange behavior. I mean, all these hatchet job articles going on, it sort of is reminiscent of being back in the primary. That's their answer to this, instead of changing their position to going what's popular with most of the country, because that's why Bernie Sanders is popular. It's not popular because he's the best orator, like former President Barack Obama. He's not popular because he's a good-looking politician like Paul Ryan or something like that. Remember his P90X bullshit or whatever? Like, everybody's like, oh my God, look at Paul Ryan, Young Guns, right? And he turned out to be a complete sociopath.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Then he speaks.
Yeah, then he actually says things, and everyone's like, "Holy shit, this guy's insane," and he's a dick. And Bernie Sanders isn't popular for any other reason other than the fact that he just talks about issues that people care about, and that are popular with that.
It's his platform that's popular.
It's not him. It's the platform.
You know what?
It's
Let me say this, because I have some people. I know some people that are in the Hillary camp. And they're friends of mine that we agree on a lot of things, but there's a few things that we are really on opposite sides of the fence of right now. And whenever they get on me and then they say, well, Bernie did this Bernie supported this pro-life person in Nebraska that's
which
very anti-choice. So first of all, so did Tom Perez and Keith Ellison. Second of all, why weren't you outraged about Tim Kaine? But anyway, let's not go down that horse, because we talked about that before. But my response has always been, look, I don't have to agree with everything Bernie's done. I don't agree with everything Bernie Sanders has done.
Absolutely.
And I'm curious what his future plans are. And if his plans are, well, I'm just going to stay within the system. And I was like, well, I don't even agree with that strategy, because I think eventually he's going to have to go over to draft Bernie. And I'm hoping, like I said previously, I hope 2018 is his deadline. I hope 2018, if they're still stringing him along, he says, you know what, fuck you guys. I'm taking my popularity and I'm going over to this party, and you guys are going to have to come to us because you will never win another election without us. It doesn't matter how much donor money you get. And we have a big, big base on our side. 42% of the country already identifies as independent anyway. Less and less people are identifying with the Democratic Party. They are slowly becoming a thing of the past, and they are doing nothing to help themselves. They are just putting nails in the coffin.
And it's because they're out of touch. Even Democratic voters, self-identified Democrats are like, the party is out of touch. They are more for the wealthy and for the elite, and we are not in favor of that. Again, I go back to that survey done by Priorities Action USA. That's a super PAC that backed Hillary Clinton. And they talked to people who were former Obama voters, voted in 2012 for Obama, and either didn't vote at all or voted for Donald Trump. And a majority of them said, we didn't vote for the Democrats because they are out of touch. The Republicans, we also think Republicans are out of touch. But Trump with his, and I know you're going to say, oh, it's not really populism, but there was a little bit of economic populism involved, along with the racism, etc., in Trump's message. And at least he was incredibly vague and would just go on about how, the Washington politicians, man, they suck. That happened to resonate with people because guess what? Washington politicians do suck. Yeah. And nobody wants anything to do with them. And, of course, Hillary Clinton, the consummate Washington politician, sucked, and she lost.
The biggest thing that I've had when like Hillary, well, I disagree with this and Bernie. I don't agree with everything Bernie does either, but I like Bernie's platform. That's a sentence that I can say that a Hillary supporter cannot say because Hillary has no platform. She had no platform. She's doing nothing now. And that's kind of that extends over to the Democrats. Who can say, well, I don't agree with everything the Democrats do, but I stand behind their platform? What platform would that be? Because, I mean, I go to Democrats.org all the time to make sure that I'm not out of line for saying this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's just platitudes. It's just bullshit. And if you read between the lines, they don't actually endorse the fight for 15. They dance around it. They don't actually endorse it. They do not endorse single-payer health care. That's very clear. Debbie Wasserman Schultz will make that clear to you. Tom Perez cannot answer that question. Nancy Pelosi cannot answer that question.
Dianne Feinstein?
They don't do shit about student loan debt. They don't give a shit. That's not even on the ballot. They're really not doing anything. I mean, they're basically just Republicans that are okay with gay people. That's the Democratic Party at this point.
Well, when you
I prefer Republicans that are okay with gay people over homophobic Republicans, yeah, but you need a little more than that if you're in a two-party system. You need to have an actual platform. They don't have one. You know who does have a platform? Bernie Sanders and people like him. Bernie Sanders has a platform. You ask Bernie Sanders what he believes in, what he wants, he'll give you concrete plans. Jill Stein has a platform. Tulsi Gabbard has a platform. These people have platforms. A lot of the progressives endorsed by Justice Democrats, endorsed by Brand New Congress, they have a platform. They have plans for their communities, actual plans. They don't just say nice things. They have actual plans. The Democrats do not have that. Hillary Clinton did not have that. And guess what? If you don't have that, you know what you do? You lose. And you continue to lose. And we're tired of losing. So you know what? When the DNC tries to scapegoat Bernie Sanders and this and that, there's nothing to scapegoat here because this is a policy that people stand behind. Bernie Sanders is that popular because of his policy. He's not popular because he's an older 75-year-old Jewish senator from Vermont with messy hair, but he has a platform that inspired a lot of people. That continues to inspire a lot of people, and he's the most popular politician in the country. So yeah, as far as what happens with the DNC, I would like to see them be held accountable for this, and most importantly of all, other than the money game, I'd like to see them finally adopt Bernie Sanders' platform, and if they don't do that, it's over. I mean, it is over. My personal deadline as a voter is 2018. You know, I'm definitely still willing to vote for some of the Justice Democrats. I'm still willing to vote for some of the progressives, still trying to work from within. I'd gladly cast a vote for Ro Khanna. I'd gladly cast a vote for Sam Ronan. I'd gladly cast a vote for Bernie, obviously, Tulsi Gabbard. But as far as, you know, I mean, if it's just continued platitude, corporate bullshit, 2018 is the deadline because we can't take any more of this.
Right, and it's not just like, and we want to get it clear to, you know, Hillary Clinton voters, right? It's not just this crazy progressive wing. Even Hillary Clinton supporters support 80% of Democrats, for example, support single-payer health care. 80%, over 80% of Democrats. That includes Hillary Clinton voters. That is that is an incredible amount of popularity. And this isn't some old poll. This is polling from the Washington Post. Okay, a Washington Post ABC News survey last week. 82% of, I believe it was 82% of Democrats and over 46% of Republicans agree with Medicare for all. These are popular policies, even among the party. Yet you ask these politicians, the Democratic politicians, whether or not they will stand for this. They will give you an answer like Dianne Feinstein and say, well, I don't want a government takeover of healthcare. You'd rather have a corporate takeover of healthcare because that's who funds your campaigns. That's why. So, you know, the Democratic Party, they need to get with it. And number one, I think the first thing you have to do is you have to admit that you've made mistakes. You have to admit what you've done wrong, the problems that you have inside the party. If you're going to have any chance of even starting to fix it, that's if you even want to fix it, which I assume that they do not, because at this point, I believe that they are paid to lose. And at some point, losing is, well, it's going to stop being lucrative, because after a while, people start to realize that maybe we don't like being on the losing team. We don't like being with the losers, so we're just going to let you lose, and we're going to go do something else. Again, with being vague, whatever something else is,
something else
remains
is
to
be
happen. Seen.
Theme for today's show.
Either there are different options, either replace them all or go to a new party, and I think both of those are going to be tried, and I'm in favor of both of those options. Because going and staying with the status quo is not an option. We've held down for too long. There are things that cannot wait. Climate change, health care, student loan debt, all those different issues, a minimum wage, a living wage. Those are issues that we can no longer afford to wait on. Something needs to be done, and it needs to be done now. And the DNC is on track to do nothing about any of that. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.